Every team in the 1998 NFL Draft passed on Randy Moss, some of them twice. Teams that had him ranked as the best receiver prospect. Teams that wanted him, but they had been told he was too dangerous to draft. And what happened next was one of the most expensive mistakes in NFL history. What did they know or think they knew that scared them off?
The coolest story of the year by far. And it was just one of those where everyone was terrified to take him and they were so worried.
To understand why 20 teams made that call, you have to go back to where it all started. Randy Moss grew up in Rand, West Virginia, a town so small it shared his name. His mother Maxine worked double shifts just to keep the bills paid. Football wasn't just a dream for Randy. It was the only door out, and he knew it. By his junior year of high school, he was the most talented receiver anyone had seen at that level. College coaches who rarely made early offers were calling. Notre Dame offered. Florida State offered. Lou Holtz watched him play and said Randy Moss was the best high school football player he'd ever seen. Bobby Bowden compared him to Deion Sanders, just bigger. The path to college football, to the NFL, to everything Randy had been working for was clear. Then came March 23rd, 1995. A fight broke out in a high school hallway. Randy was charged with a felony that would be later reduced, but the damage was already done. Notre Dame pulled their scholarship. The dream school, the one Randy had grown up imagining himself playing for, vanished overnight. That could have been the end, but Florida State stepped in. Bobby Bowden believed in second chances, and for a moment, it looked like Randy's path was back on track. But in April of 1996, while Randy was serving the remainder of his sentence on work release, he tested positive for marijuana. Florida State let him go. The second door slammed shut. That's when Marshall University called. It was a Division I AA school, 1 hour from home. For most NFL scouts, he was invisible. What scouts saw on tape from Marshall didn't matter. The file on Randy Moss said risk, and in the NFL, risk means liability. What nobody realized was that Randy was building in that invisibility. But stop here for a second, because what was actually happening at Marshall wasn't a cautionary tale. It was a masterclass. Routes that defensive coordinators at the pro level couldn't scheme against. A release off the line that made cornerbacks look like they were standing in concrete. A catch radius that was supernatural. By the end of his freshman season, Randy had 1,709 receiving yards and 28 touchdowns. Marshall went undefeated and won the Division I AA National Championship. The next year, Marshall moved up to Division 1A, and Randy kept going. He caught 26 touchdowns that season. He won the Biletnikoff Award, finished 4th in Heisman voting. In 2 seasons, he caught 174 passes for 3,529 yards and 54 touchdowns. And here's what made NFL scouts start paying attention. Marshall's head coach, Bob Pruitt, told every NFL team that would listen the same thing. Randy hadn't missed a single practice in 2 years. He hadn't caused a single problem. The production spoke for itself. And in March of 1998, Randy was about to show them something they'd never seen. At the Marshall Pro Day, Randy ran the 40-yard dash in 4.25 seconds in 25-degree weather into gale force winds. Viking scout Conrad Cardano was there watching, hand timing him into low 4.3s. Scouts went back to their offices and wrote it down. Generational talent. Best receiver prospect they'd ever evaluated. The NFL knew all of this. That's what makes the 1998 draft so remarkable. It wasn't ignorance, it was fear. 20 teams passed. Teams that needed Randy Moss. And on April 18th, 1998, that fear was about to be tested when draft day arrived. Randy sat at home in Charleston, West Virginia with his mother beside him. The television was on, the phone within reach. This was the moment Randy had been waiting for his entire life. Every sacrifice and every game had been building to this. Pick 1 came and went. Randy kept waiting. Pick 2, still waiting. Pick 3, the phone stayed silent. The Dallas Cowboys had the 8th pick. Jerry Jones had told Randy during a pre-draft visit that if he was still available, Dallas would likely take him. Randy had even hung out with Deion Sanders at his house, talking about what it would be like to play in Dallas. The Cowboys had a scout in Charleston that morning, watching Randy wait by that phone. Pick 8 came up. The Cowboys were on the clock. The phone didn't ring. Dallas announced Greg Ellis, a defensive end. Head coach Sean Gailey and receivers coach Dwayne Painter didn't want the risk. The Cowboys already had Michael Irvin and Eric Williams making headlines for the wrong reasons. Jerry Jones felt he couldn't take another chance. Jim Garrett, the quarterback's coach, argued in the war room that this wasn't the Boy Scouts, this was pro football, and they needed to draft him. It didn't matter. The decision was made. Randy kept waiting. Pick 9 came and went. Pick 10, pick 12. Every time a team passed, it felt like another door closing. Then came pick 16. Kevin Dyson, a receiver from Utah, was selected by Tennessee, the first receiver off the board. Randy Moss, the best receiver prospect scouts had ever evaluated, was still sitting there. The Vikings had the 21st pick. Minnesota already had Chris Carter and Jake Reed at receiver, 2 proven veterans. GM Jeff Diamond admitted later that they never thought they'd have a chance at Randy. They assumed he'd go top 10. Definitely wouldn't get past Dallas at 8. But when Minnesota's turn came, Randy was still on the board. Head coach Dennis Green made the call. He told reporters Randy was a young man who made mistakes at 18 and 19 years old, that his life was ahead of him, that Minnesota was taking the high road. And this is what no one expected.
The Minnesota Vikings have selected wide receiver from Marshall University, Randy Moss.
In week 1 of the 1998 season, Randy caught his first NFL pass against Tampa Bay, an 11-yard slant. Routine. Then he lined up again. The ball came out, and Randy took off down the sideline. 48 yards later, he was in the end zone. His first career touchdown. Later in the same game, he caught another one for 32 yards. Randy had just caught 2 touchdowns in his NFL debut, and he was just getting started. Then came week 5, Monday Night Football in Green Bay. The whole world was watching. The Packers couldn't cover him. By the time the game ended, people were starting to realize what Minnesota had found at pick 21. But the real statement was still coming. In week 13, Thanksgiving in Dallas, the game Jerry Jones had been dreading. Randy walked into Texas Stadium and caught 3 passes for 163 yards and 3 touchdowns. Right there in front of Jerry Jones. Right there in front of the home crowd that could have been cheering for him. The Cowboys had no answer. Week 14 against Chicago, Randy caught 3 more touchdowns in a 48-22 win. By December, defensive coordinators were scheming entire game plans around stopping him. It didn't matter. An NFL record. He wasn't developing into a star, he arrived as one. The Vikings went 15-1 and scored 556 points. An NFL record at the time. They never scored fewer than 24 points in a single game. 12 of their 15 wins came by double digits.
Y'all can put that in y'all's book. I told you and I told you. Touchdown.
Minnesota had built the most explosive offense in NFL history, and Randy was the reason why. But here's where everything changed. The playoffs started, and Minnesota rolled through the competition. They beat Arizona 41-21 in the divisional round. Then came the NFC Championship game against Atlanta. The Vikings were at home, heavy favorites. 1 win away from the Super Bowl. 1 win away from validating everything they'd believed about Randy Moss. Late in the 4th quarter, Minnesota was ahead and driving. Their kicker, Gary Anderson, had been perfect all season. Every field goal, every extra point. He hadn't missed one all year. The Vikings lined up for a field goal that would have put them up by 10 with minutes left. The game would have been over. Anderson kicked it. He missed. Atlanta tied the game on the next drive. The game went to overtime. The Falcons won in sudden death. Just like that, Randy's rookie year, the greatest offensive season in NFL history at that point, ended 1 game short of the Super Bowl. 20 teams watched all of it happen. Every touchdown. Every reminder of what they'd passed on. So why did it take the rest of the league another decade to admit what Minnesota knew in week 1? Here's what took 20 teams a decade to understand. The league didn't blacklist Randy Moss because of what he did. They blacklisted him because of what he represented. A player who operated by his own rules, who jogged on plays he didn't like, who said exactly what he thought, who didn't apologize for who he was. The NFL in the late 1990s was built on a specific kind of player. Coachable, grateful, and controllable. Randy Moss was none of those things. Randy played 6 more seasons in Minnesota Minnesota after that rookie year. In 2003, he caught 111 passes for 1,632 yards and 17 touchdowns. Then came the Oakland years. People said he was washed, that he'd lost it, that the best years were behind him. Then New England called in 2007. At 30 years old, Randy proved every single one of them wrong. Here's what all 20 teams missed. By the time he walked away from the game, the numbers told the story teams didn't want to hear. 15,292 yards. In the 2007 season, at 30 years old, he caught 23 touchdowns and rewrote the record books. A Hall of Fame vote that was nearly unanimous. The 20 teams that passed on Randy Moss didn't make a football mistake. They made a cultural one. They confused compliance with character. But the story doesn't end with Randy's career. The 1998 draft wasn't an anomaly. It was a symptom of how the NFL operated. Front offices had a profile, and anything that deviated got flagged regardless of talent. Randy Moss wasn't the only player this happened to. He was just the most visible example of what that system cost teams. The franchise that passed on him paid for it in Super Bowl windows they never opened. They were 5 games behind the 15-1 Vikings. Years later, Jerry Jones apologized to Randy and called Greg Ellis the safer pick. Randy went 7-0 lifetime against the Cowboys with 10 touchdowns. Every time he played them, it was a reminder of what that 8th pick could have been. But here's what that actually meant for Randy. Randy Moss has spoken about those pre-draft months. The interviews where he felt evaluated like livestock instead of a human being. The character questions had nothing to do with football. The sense that no matter what he said, the decision had already been made before he walked into the room. He showed up anyway, and he became the greatest receiver of his generation. Not because the system believed in him, but in spite of it. Every time a front office mistakes personality for character, they're making the same bet Dallas made in 1998, and they're losing the same way. Remember what the scouts filed 27 years ago? Too dangerous to draft? The only thing dangerous about Randy Moss was what he did to secondaries. Randy Moss retired with records that still stand. The teams that passed on him retired with regret. The real question isn't whether the NFL was wrong about Moss, it's whether anything has actually changed. Whether the next Randy Moss is sitting in a pre-draft interview right now, answering questions about a bar fight instead of his route tree. So if this story made you think differently, hit that like button, comment on what you want us to cover next, and subscribe for more stories like this. You won't want to miss them.